The Anti-Corruption Commission, President Nkrumah opened up State House, opened up office of the Vice President, and they raided those offices. They searched all the computers, took materials away. You cannot do more than that. And then he hands over the issue to the Anti-Corruption Commission, which is in charge, and says to them, leave no sacred cow. Go after everybody. If I can open State House, if I can open office of the Vice President, no sacred cow. I don't think he could have done more than that.
So now let's come to the transition properly, the handing over notes. It could be recalled that President Ernest Bai Koroma, former, visited State House on the eve of inauguration and handed over notes to the current president, Julius Maada Bio. Yeah. It's a 36-page document that was released last night at midnight exactly to the public. And it is now being widely debated. So how would you describe in general the handing over notes of President Ernest Bai Koroma? Because I have seen analysts even calling it a fraudulent handing over notes that does not reflect the reality of President Koroma's legacy.
Well, when you live in a democratic state, in a democratic nation, in fact, one of the points that is in the handing over notes, between page 6 to page 7 of the handing over notes, is the president highlighting his legacy of tolerance to criticism. And the reason why he was able to tolerate criticism is because he's a democratic leader. And in a democratic dispensation, you expect to be criticized. So there's no way we expected to release these handing over notes and not have someone critique it. But what I would say about these notes is that these notes are going to stand the test of time. These notes are going to last into history. And those who are criticizing these notes are going to be the ones who would fall into the dustbin of history. Because what we have here in these notes, anybody with a conscience who reads these notes, even in the notes, you can see the former president praising his successor in the notes for leaving his PhD studies in London and coming to help Sierra Leone to end Ebola. You can see, I cannot imagine any statesmanship bigger than that one, to remember and remind the rest of Sierra Leone that in case you have forgotten, when we were fighting Ebola, your new president left his PhD studies to come to Sierra Leone and help us to fight it. Don't forget, it's in the handing over notes. So I think it's a note that's going to last the test of time. Even
though it appears more political than reflecting on his actual legacy?
I think, I don't agree with you on that. It actually reflects on it, and it provides so much guidance, so much steps, which if the new president takes an open mind to read this document, he would be well guided as to how he can lead the rest of us in Sierra Leone for the rest of his tenure. I wouldn't call it political.
Because again, if you go through the general content of that handing over note, someone will say, well, if this is the reality that President Ernest Bai Koroma left behind for Mr. Julius Maada Bio, I think Mr. Maada Bio, his SLPP people, and the general Sierra Leoneans should be celebrating by now that, well, President Koroma at least left the country in the brink of takeoff amid all of the challenges that surmounted his tenure.
I would not say brink of takeoff. We have already taken off. We are on the way. We are on a solid path to achieving our aspirations for the year 2030, which is a stable social and economic life, and a country that has middle income status by 2030. We've taken off long ago, and we got paused, we got buffeted by the Ebola and the iron ore shocks. But then we stabilized the flight and we continued our journey. I think we are on course.
But the new government does not seem happy with what they inherited.
They are playing politics. The new government is playing politics. You see, when you're in a democracy, then you have to use, you don't use the bullets anymore to retain and sustain power. What you use is your mouth. What you use is your public relations. So the new government, they know they cannot use bullets, they cannot use force. So what they are using is propaganda. And but the truth of the matter is that the new government knows that they have inherited a solid systems that have been put in place by President Nkrumah, including the fact that we now have the most transparent government since colonial days. We have not had a government as transparent as the one left by President Ernest Bai Koroma. The new government knows that. The new government knows that in terms of accountability, the audit service, the Anti-Corruption Commission, we have left structures in place that are unprecedented, the way we have strengthened like the audit service, for example. So the new government knows that we had economic challenges, but despite the economic challenges, at no point in time did we have a high risk of debt distress, meaning that at no point in time did our debts that we took to develop Sierra Leone and to sustain us when we were buffered, at no point in time did we reach because you have different levels of debt distress.
But he still left behind lots of debts in the billions of leones.
Dollars, in fact.
Dollars.
I'm going to quote His Excellency Dr. Julius Maada Bio. I respect him, and so I'm going to quote what he said. He said $2 billion, which is the smallest debt for any of the countries in the sub-region. $2 billion is small. I mean, American government has trillions and trillions of debt. There's no country in the world. Well, maybe Libya under the late Gaddafi did not have debts. But there's no country in the world, Fonty, that does not have debts. And even though we have debts, you can see the development strides. These handing over notes, I have a friend of mine who is an ardent supporter of the SLPP. He called me this morning after he finished reading these notes. And he was saying to me the breadth of the developmental strides. For example, let's take electricity. Magboroka had electricity restored. Because you see, this electricity is not just Freetown. A lot of people just think it's Freetown and the western area. It's been a nationwide explosion of electricity connectivity. Magboroka after 33 years, Potloko after 32 years, Kono after 32 years. Places like Sheikh Brema, like Makale, like Panguma, like Binti, Konakridi. These are far-flung places who never had electricity. Now they have electricity.
But talking about electricity, Dr. Blyden, with all the massive, whatever President Koroma Foma noted in his handing over note that he inherited some 47 million kilowatt hours of electricity, and he left behind 350 million kilowatt hours of electricity. Is that not one of the reasons why people would think these statements are more political than the reality? Because it will seem people voted out President Koroma's APC government, but it would also seem that they indirectly also voted out electricity, because the day President Ernest Bai Koroma left power, electricity left. We're now struggling to revive electricity, as it's been said by the new government.
You see what happened, one of the mistakes that the new government made, I can say this easily on camera, one of the mistakes that His Excellency President Julius Maada Bio made was sitting back and allowing these thugs, brutes, to chase people in this country after he took up office. So he got everybody scared, and a lot of people ran away. So when people run, they go with the knowledge that they had as to how to make things happen. So if he had only within 24 hours to 48 hours of these menace, these thugs, these brutes running behind people, like a colleague minister of mine, they looted his entire house. If only His Excellency had stopped them, then a lot of people would have been comfortable to stay and help in the transition period. And when they would have stayed and helped in the transition period, they would have been able to guide and advise on this electricity aspect. It is not that when President Koroma left, electricity left. What happened was, when the change of power happened, there was this huge vacuum. They didn't know what to do. I can personally say it here today that a member of the transition team was on social media, and he contacted me privately because I was doing this, I was mocking them with this Kaba Tiger, Bio Tiger. We had these generators and we were mocking them on social media that, oh, now you have brought back Kaba Tiger. So he sent me a private message. He said, oh, Dr. Blyden, you people are mocking us now because you are the same one, you have put off ADAX, you have done this. I said, no. The reason why you're having this problem, you have not done a proper transition. So then I asked them, I contacted the former Minister of Energy. He was actually leaving hospital in Nigeria at the time, and I said to him, please, Henry, help these people out. They don't have a clue as to what is happening. Whatever it takes, give them, let them understand the subsidies that have to be put in place to ensure this electricity. Because you see, we didn't just provide electricity. We provided the electricity so that the poorest person can have access to electricity. And by having access to electricity, his child can study and become a future doctor or future lawyer. By having access to electricity, he can grow his economic and social life. So we had to be subsidizing electricity also. So I had to connect Henry with them, and he immediately was willing. He connected with them and gave them some advice, gave them some tips as to what they were doing wrong.